I started studying the guitar when I was 8 or 9 years of age, and the first few lessons that I had were very confusing and very complicated. And in fact, the first scale I had to learn I thought was an E scale, and it went something like this. Starts with an E, sounds like an E scale, right? Well, that's not quite exactly right. And after I'd been studying music for a little while, I started to appreciate that it's not just the note you start with that defines the scale, it's actually the intervals. And you probably recognize those intervals as being part of the C major scale. And so once we kind of catch on that we're on the C major scale, we ask ourselves, well, what does it mean to start on that E note? Well, as we get a little more sophisticated, we realize that takes us into modes. We're kind of doing an E Phrygian mode of the C major scale, and everything starts to connect again. That's great. So we're starting to get a feel for some of the meaning behind the music. Still have to practice the scale, still have to get the skills, but now we're starting to understand the idea. And then they come up with the best idea ever. Let's do something musical. And of course, Greensleeves becomes the first sort of musical thing that you do. Well, that sounds very C-like. Everything's sort of C-like, except suddenly a note got thrown in that wasn't part of the C major scale. A G sharp ends up in there. And so how do we reconcile this? Well, the easiest way to reconcile it is to say, it's a note that sounds good, we can put it in, and it's just sort of a passing note. All right, at least we don't do it again. Well, the next part of our Greensleeves, not only do we keep the G sharp, but we throw an F sharp in as well. All right, now we're getting very confused again. And so this is the way we evolve our music. We sort of try to get a baseline of what makes sense. It makes sense to claim that we are in some form of the C major scale and that the Greensleeves tune sounds good, but we tossed a couple extra notes in just to make things sound a little bit better. All right. As an 8-year-old kid, though, this is a little confusing. You know, after we get a little bit more education, a little more sophistication, we make a little more progress and things start to make sense. And so we keep sort of struggling along with this, but then we find it just doesn't go away. So we have picked up a couple little things, but let's ask ourselves something else. What's the first note we're playing in Greensleeves? Well, that's an A. Uh-oh, I think we have another problem. Because when we work in the key of C, we sort of expect C to be our dominant or root type flavor of it, and we suddenly put in an A. Well, how does A relate to C? Well, if we just count it off, C, D, E, F, G, A, it's the sixth. The sixth is special. That's our relative minor. And so in fact, when we play Greensleeves, our intervals are all going to be within the key of C. That's all true. But we're kind of hitting this thing like a minor rather than a major. That A feels very much like an A minor chord is kicking it off. And so there's a lot of complexity, especially for a kid, starting out with the idea of here's the first scale, finger positions you should learn. It feels like it should be an E. It's actually a C. When we go to our first sort of melodic entity to deal with, Greensleeves, we want it to be a C, but there's notes that don't work. And in fact, it's an A major. Wow, it's tough being a kid and learning about music, isn't it?